revealed how a hidden bond between a poor maid and her billionaire boss led to an amazing rescue. Maria woke before the sun, her alarm clock blinking 4:30 a.m. The sky was still dark, but her heart raced a little faster than usual. Today was the day she would lead her community in a protest against the eviction threats looming over her neighbors. Just thinking about it tightened her chest. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her two children, and quietly brewed coffee, the aroma mixing with the cold morning air. By the time she reached the luxurious high-rise in Manhattan, the world outside had already come alive. As she entered the pristine, marble-floored foyer, the contrast was stark. Locker rooms of affluence. And then there was her Maria, a maid with worries buried deep beneath the weight of her days. She had been cleaning Adrian's home for over a year now. He was a billionaire, a man encased in walls thicker than the skyscrapers around them. But behind his fortune was a tinge of loneliness, a flicker of something late-night talk shows wouldn't dare to explore. As she dusted ornate frames featuring landscapes she could only dream of visiting, Maria often caught glimpses of Adrian retreating into isolation. Their exchanges, brief yet potent, involved fleeting smiles and shared laughter over mundane topics. Each moment felt like a burst of sunlight breaking through Maria's burdened heart. "Maria, you have a way of bringing joy into the mundane," Adrian once told her, and that compliment warmed her more than any luxury could. They were worlds apart, yet those moments wove invisible threads that connected them, trembling with potential. But today, the stakes were higher. Maria's community was crumbling. Her dear neighbors, who looked after her children while she worked late shifts, received eviction notices, their world shattering right before her eyes. She had to do something. As her peers readied for work, she gathered the courage to mobilize them, her determination sparking fire in their hearts. "We have to fight for our homes," she shouted, her voice shaking but defiant. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the protest arrived, and the streets echoed with their cries, fervent and powerful. As it unfolded like a scene from a movie, chaos erupted. Authorities clashed with the passionate crowd, each voice echoing the unfairness of a world built on privilege. Maria stood at the forefront, her heart racing, as Adrian watched from a distance, conflicted. His privilege blurred the lines of compassion, reflecting in the uncertainty etched on his face. But then something shifted in the air. The raw emotion and urgency surged like tidal waves crashing against the shore of his indifference. As Maria shouted relentlessly for justice, she suddenly locked eyes with Adrian. At that moment, everything changed. The truth spilled open like a cracked dam. The stakes had risen, and in that spark of connection, Maria would chase the light of hope. Would he step forward, bearing the weight of his privilege to stand beside her? Could their hidden bond shape a future beyond the constraints of their realities? In this moment, they were both faced with the realization that sometimes it takes breaking down walls to find what truly sustains us all. The air buzzed with tension, a thick mix of anger and desperation wrapping around the crowd like a heavy fog. Maria stood tall, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest as she held the mic, her voice echoing through the throng of protesters. The beauty of the city around her felt distant, overshadowed by the plight of her community. Yet she pressed on, each word a fire igniting the resolve of the people alongside her. "Together, we can't be broken. Our homes matter," she shouted, the words ripping from her throat with raw emotion. The crowd responded, a wave of energy surging through them as they raised their banners high, displaying messages of defiance against the injustice presented before them. But just as she felt a surge of hope, a glance towards Adrian sent a shiver down her spine that he stood there, still, eyes wide searching. Maria's voice caught in her throat for a brief moment as their eyes locked. It was as if time stopped. She discerned confusion battling with an ember of understanding in his gaze. The distance between them was palpable, but that unspoken connection stretched further, igniting something deeper within them both. Please, she thought, willing him to take a step forward. Join us. Yet he remained frozen, his body a fortress, unreachable and riddled with fear. Suddenly, shouts pierced the tension as police moved closer, pushing against the crowd. Maria's gaze flickered to the clash, anxiety washing over her. This isn't how it should be, she yelled, spurred by a swell of adrenaline. She fought back against the swell of panic that threatened to consume her. Stay strong, everyone. We're in this together. Just then, Adrian broke from his daze. Without thinking, he pushed his way through the crowd, each step cutting through the haze of uncertainty. Maria's heart leaped, hope blooming anew amidst chaos. He was here, he was really here. Maria? He called, his voice rising above the clamor, urgency threading through his tone. As he reached her side, confusion melted into something powerful. The shadows that had haunted his presence slowly dissipated, replaced by determination. What is happening? He asked, whispering incredulously as he looked over the gathering crowd. Each person was a story, families, lives entwined in unexpected ways, all united by one common goal. This isn't right, he finally said, voice steadying. Adrian's initial hesitation faded. Together, they saw the very soul of their community, stripped bare, raw beneath the circumstances. His hand found its way to hers, grasping the warmth she offered as solidarity danced between them. Maria felt his resolve strengthen her own, sparkling with the energy of connection. Together she breathed, we can challenge this. The words resonated deep within her, echoing with newfound vibrancy. The waves of the crowd surged, invigorated as they witnessed the burgeoning alliance before them. But suddenly, from the back of the crowd, a voice shouted, a distraction that jolted Maria from her moment of euphoria. They're coming to take our homes. It was a cry of desperation that spiraled through the crowd, sparking fear. The emotion intensified. Adrian looked around, uncertainty creeping into his eyes, while Maria clutched his hand tighter. The question loomed heavy in the air. Could this billionaire, bonded by unseen threads to a simple maid, truly shoulder the weight of their fight for justice? As tensions mounted, the possibility of change hung delicately in the balance. Would Adrian stand firm, or would the waves of privilege tug him under? The moment shimmered with promise, but also dread. What would he choose? Her heart raced as she awaited his response, knowing that the course of their lives and the fight for their homes hung precariously in this very moment. Would courage unfold, or would it crumble like fallen leaves? At that instant, Maria realized they were on the edge of something monumental, and she could hardly breathe, waiting for the answer. Adrian stood there, uncertainty skimming over his features like a shadow. The weight of the crowd's despair bore down on him, each shout stabbing through the air like a knife. A part of him was still anchored in his privileged world, the one that dismissed these voices as mere noise. But Maria's hand felt warm and steady in his, a lifeline amidst the turmoil. He stammered, every instinct in him fighting against what he had just witnessed. He cleared his throat, forcing the words past his lips. I can't just stand by. I need to help. The crowd surged at his declaration, a palpable gasp of surprise mixed with hope rising among them. Maria's heart swelled as she looked into his eyes. She recognized something deep within him, a fierce desire awakening. We need you, she replied, her voice firm yet tender, willing him to realize the gravity of the moment. You have the power to make a difference. Stand with us. As if on cue, the police advanced, their shields glinting ominously under the dull sky. The crowd began to jitter nervously. Murmurs and anxious glances spread like wildfire. Maria could see the tension in every face, feel every heartbeat echoing in solidarity. Adrian squeezed her hand tighter, a newfound determination etched on his brow. Okay, together. The intensity in his voice was electric, sparking a new wave of energy around them. Maria could feel the crowd leaning in, rallying strength behind their shared resolve. But as the officers pushed through the throng, the atmosphere shifted. Back up, yelled one officer, a commanding presence. Fear gripped the people around them. Protests turned to panic. Stay strong, Maria shouted again. She felt the heat of the moment rise, inflating her spirit. This is about our homes, our lives. It was a reminder of what they were fighting for, what they had to lose. Adrian stepped forward, suddenly emboldened. He raised his free arm high, as if it could block the wave of authority heading their way. You can't take our homes. His voice broke above the chaos, raw and powerful, surprising even himself. The police halted, baffled. Adrian's face turned resolute. We're not just numbers to be pushed aside. We're human beings, with stories and families. You need to listen. Around him, whispers turned into shouts, fists raised high. Maria watched as the tide started to shift, an undercurrent of solidarity and determination pushing against the intimidating lines of law enforcement. Adrian, one of the older protesters cried, tears glistening in her eyes. You're one of us now. That simple proclamation reverberated through the group. It was both a challenge and an invitation. The barriers Adrian had carried, the privilege he had often hidden behind, began to dissolve before him. Maria felt a wave of pride swell within her. He was breaking free, stepping towards a shared destiny. Let us stand tall together, she called out, feeling the pulse of the moment surge through her veins. A collective roar erupted, echoing off the buildings around them. Amidst the chaos, a faction of the police seemed to reconsider, their faces shifting from indifference to uncertainty. But just as she thought they might reach a breakthrough, the crackle of a radio broke through the escalating tension. Reinforcements are on the way, a voice warned, slicing through hope like a knife. Adrian's eyes widened. We need a plan, he shouted over the clamor. Maria looked into his eyes, her heart pounding. What if we use the crowd to our advantage? We can create a barrier, block them from pushing us back. And just like that, they shared a glance of understanding, an unspoken agreement to fight for everyone standing there. As they rallied the people, Maria felt the energy shift again, a current of possibilities swirling around them. Together, they might just stand firm against the tide. But with sirens wailing in the distance, Maria's stomach twisted with uncertainty. What would happen next? Would their uprising be met with force? In that moment, as adrenaline coursed through her, she knew one thing. This fight was just beginning. Would they manage to safeguard their homes? Or would this moment of bravery be snuffed out? The uncertainty awaited as the crowd steeled themselves for what was to come. Adrian felt the heat around him, a mix of fear and determination. He turned to Maria, her eyes bright with resolve, and his heart raced. There was strength in their connection, a tether that fortified him even amidst the chaos. Each face in the crowd reflected a story, a life worth fighting for, and he couldn't turn away now. Okay, everyone, Maria shouted, her voice rising above the tumult. Form a line. We're going to block them from advancing. With her words, Adrian took a deep breath. He turned his back toward the approaching officers, ready to face the wave of anger and uncertainty head-on. He could feel noise thrumming in his veins, shouts of support, desperate pleas for justice. This was no longer just a fight for homes. It was a fight for identity. The crowd, emboldened by their shared purpose, swiftly began to form a human barrier, arms linked tightly as they stood shoulder to shoulder. The underlying fear of confrontation was palpable, but the energy shifted into something electric. They were no longer individuals. They were a collective force. Stay together, Adrian shouted, pushing the fear down within him. This was a moment of unity, a wall built from lives intertwined with hopes and dreams mingled in one voice. He felt the pressure of hands on his shoulder, felt Maria's steady presence next to him. And then, the police began to advance, their phalanx of blue closing in, shields raised. A tension hung thick in the air as Adrian backed up a step, sending an anxious ripple through the crowd. Don't falter, Maria yelled, her voice unwavering. We're stronger than they know. Adrian glanced at her, that spark in her eyes bringing clarity to his purpose. He wasn't alone. This wasn't just a fight he could turn away from. As the officers' lines approached, he could see hesitation flickering in their eyes, moments of uncertainty that hinted they didn't want this fight either. But duty had them locked in, and when a commanding officer raised his hand to signal the advance, the tension ignited like a match to kindling. Stop, Adrian yelled, stepping forward, cracking his voice but unwilling to retreat. You are not just following orders. His voice rang out, echoing through the alley where they had gathered. Look at us. We're families. We're neighbors. We're part of this community. The officers hesitated. Adrian pressed on, feeling the surge of courage flooding him. We can find a solution. Talk to us instead of pushing us away. A moment stretched on a long, pregnant pause as both sides absorbed his plea. Maria, emboldened, added, "Let us negotiate. People need homes, not confrontation." A whisper traveled through the crowd, shifting the mood. One by one, voices began to echo their agreement. "Talk to us," rose up among the throng, a collective heartbeat that made the ground rumble beneath them. That a police officer stepped forward, his shield lowered slightly, brows furrowed. "We're just doing what we're told. We don't want violence," he admitted, hesitating as he faced the crowd. With a spark of hope, Adrian took a step closer, lowering his own voice as he reached for common ground. "Then let us find a way to stop this without a fight. You have families too, don't you?" Silence fell like a curtain. It was a powerful moment, raw and unfiltered, and Adrian felt the tension release just a little. Could this spark lead to something more? The crackle of radios and sirens in the distance only served as a reminder that time was running out. Reinforcements were coming, and the tide could shift any moment. "Stay united," Maria yelled, squeezing Adrian's hand, pulling him back from the edge of despair. "We can still do this together." But doubt roiled within him, underneath the fervor of the crowd. Would these chains of connection be enough? Would they hold the line, or would it all collapse? The sirens wailed closer, and a dark cloud of uncertainty loomed over them. Adrian felt the crowd solidifying behind him, yet sensed the looming danger ahead. Would they break their silence, or would they face an even louder chaos? He took a deep breath, eyes scanning the faces around him. This battle was only beginning. Would they stand together and hold the line, or would the darkness consume them all? Adrian could feel the fear creeping back in, wrapping around his chest like a tight coil. The officers advanced, their formation steady, but the flicker of doubt in their eyes sparked a flicker of hope within him. Maria's hand felt warm in his, a lifeline in this storm. He couldn't shake the sense that a choice hung in the air. "Listen," he shouted, his voice cracking again, but more forceful this time. "We're not your enemies. We're all people trying to live our lives." Another officer, younger than the rest, shifted his weight from one foot to the other, a frown creasing his brow. The older officer next to him glanced back as if seeking permission to engage. That little hesitation felt monumental, like it could tip the scales between violence and understanding. "Just talk to us," Maria echoed, her voice softer, but it carried warmth. "We all want the same thing at the end of the day. No one wants to see anyone get hurt." Adrian took a step forward, heart racing. "Exactly. Families shouldn't be torn apart. Can't we discuss it?" He caught sight of Maria's encouraging nod, her faith in him burning bright. Fear began to ripple through the ranks of police, uncertainty replacing their earlier confidence. "We're just following orders," the older officer finally said, his voice quieter now, revealing a crack in his armor. "Then let us change the orders." Adrian felt adrenaline surge through him. "You don't have to fight us. We can all find common ground." A tense silence enveloped the alley, punctuated only by the distant sound of sirens drawing near. Adrian held his breath, wishing with all his heart for the officers to see the humanity shining in each face before them. They were not just a crowd. They were lives intertwined with hopes for the future. "Is it really worth it?" A voice rose from the crowd, a woman holding a child, her expression fierce but vulnerable. "Tearing families apart for a piece of land?" That question hung heavy, and Adrian could see the officers glancing at one another, considering. The young officer shifted again, stepping slightly away from the others, drawing closer to Adrian and the people. "It might not be," he said, his voice trembling just a bit. Adrian leaned into that uncertainty, stirring it deeper. "If we can talk, if we can listen to each other, maybe just maybe we can find a way to keep our homes and keep the peace." From the back of the crowd, an elderly man with a cane shouted, "We've lived here for decades. This isn't just property to us, it's our lives." More voices joined in, building momentum. Adrian noticed faces, their expressions shifting from anger to cautious hope. The sirens now closer felt like an impending storm, but he couldn't stop now. "Please," he said, "let us come together. We can solve this without bearing arms or shields. We're stronger united than divided." The older officer hesitated, eyes flickering between Adrian and the mounting energy in the crowd. "But if we stand down," he began, his voice trailing off as he tried to reconcile the orders he had been given with the humanity unfolding in front of him. For a moment, it seemed like the world stood still. Adrian felt Maria's hand grip his tightly, her heartbeat syncing with his. The tension in the air thickened as all eyes focused on the officer, who was weighing the balance of his role against the weight of their words. Was this moment the turning point they needed, or would external forces plunge them back into chaos? As the sirens grew louder and the stakes loomed ever higher, Adrian felt a flicker of desperation again. Would they be able to turn this fleeting moment of understanding into something real? Just one chance, Adrian whispered, half to himself and half to the officer. That's all I'm asking for. But the overwhelming tension crackled like static electricity in the air, and he could feel it building to a breaking point. Would the officer find courage and compassion, or would they all still be swept away in an unstoppable tide? In the stillness, he wondered if courage had a name. If someone like him, like all of them, could make history simply by standing still. What if they got the chance to reshape their world? And then, shadows moved in the distance, hinting that something else was on the horizon. What would happen when that something arrived? The air was electric, charged with anticipation and fading anger as the officer's gaze moved back to the crowd. Adrian could see it, a flicker of something, maybe recognition, glimmering in the older officer's eyes. But just as hope started to bloom, another sound broke through the storm. A loud crack echoed from the entrance of the alley as a heavy vehicle rolled into view, its headlights blinding against the night that a dark SUV, unmarked, pulled to a sudden halt. The door swung open. Adrian's heart raced as a tall figure stepped out, wearing tactical gear that clung to his frame. He was in control, exuding authority. The atmosphere thickened, and panic rippled through the crowd like a wildfire. Stay where you are? The newcomer barked, his voice a guttural command. The younger officer flinched, eyes darting nervously between the crowd and his superior. Get them in line. Now. Adrian's heart sank. It felt like a match struck against kindling, each moment igniting the situation further. The officers were torn now, caught between their instincts to hold their ground and the voice of a community pleading for understanding. Please. Adrian raised his hands, palms outward, an effort to show he meant no harm, but all he saw in the elder officer's eyes was confusion mixed with fear. We're not your enemies. We just want to talk. We can work this out. The commander, oblivious to the intense emotions swirling around him, stepped forward. Listen, I'm here to enforce compliance. There will be no talking, and I will not tolerate defiance. You will disperse. A hush fell over the crowd, and Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. Uncertainty lurked in every shadow. Was this the end of their moment? Then, he felt a squeeze from Maria's hand, grounding him. Her courage whispered that he might still push through the uncertainty. Adrian, she breathed, her eyes shining with determination. We can't just stand by. That was it. Something clicked. Adrian needed to act. You think we're defying you? We're standing up for our homes, our families. He shouted, his voice rising over the tension. This isn't just a protest. This is our fight for dignity. When will that be worth listening to? The commander glanced quickly at the officers behind him, confusion etching more lines across his brow. The younger officer, who had stepped forward earlier, took a breath and, against the flow, began to shake his head. Sir, maybe we should listen, he suggested, uncertainty lacing his words like a fragile string. It was their doubt creeping into the stronghold of authority. You heard us, Maria called out, standing tall. It's time for the truth. In that moment, everything shifted. The air felt thick with possibility, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And then, from the back, the elderly man with the cane stepped forward again. We are humans, not threats. My grandson is scared. He just wants to play outside, please. Listen to him. Listen to us. The old man's voice cracked, and a ripple of emotion coursed through the crowd. Adrian felt his heart pounding wildly. This was the human touch they needed to bridge the divide, but as the tension thickened, something about the commander's expression made Adrian uneasy. Was he truly bending, or was this just a facade that hid something darker? Footsteps were approaching from behind the SUV, a group of officers, clad in riot gear, advancing steadily toward them. The sirens were no longer just distant sounds. Reality raced toward them like an impending storm, ready to break. Adrian's mind raced as he weighed the moment. Could they hold this fragile bond? Could they expose the truth before time ran out? Now or never, he whispered to himself, adrenaline surging anew. But just as they gathered strength to confront the approaching wave, a crackle blossomed through the alley. The figures in the shadows shifted, almost imperceptibly, as if the very air itself was about to explode. What did that mean for their desperate plea? Would they stand strong, or would they be crushed under the weight of chaos? Adrian's thoughts spun as he realized they were at the precipice. Either they would succeed in their mission, or everything would be lost. What would they become in the wake of these choices? The tension hung in the air, crackling like a live wire. Adrian stepped forward, heart hammering in his chest, but his voice held steady. You can't scare us into submission. This isn't just about us, it's about our children, our future. He felt the fire inside him rise, fueled by the support of those around him, faces shining with a blend of hope and defiance. The commander raised an eyebrow, the flicker of recognition fading as he took a menacing step closer. Your future? You think this is about your future? This is about maintaining order. His tone dripped with authority, yet Adrian sensed a flicker of doubt, a crack in the armor he wore so confidently. Before Adrian could speak, a loud clang echoed from the alley's mouth. The riot officers, heavily armored and imposing, halted behind the SUV. Their helmets gleamed under the harsh lights, making them appear even more intimidating. Adrian's heart raced. This was the moment chaos could erupt, and he was acutely aware of the stakes. Fall back, someone shouted from the back. It was an unexpected voice, one that rang out clear and firm through the chaos. Adrian turned to see the younger officer, the one who had suggested they listen, pushing his way forward. The tension in the air shifted, drawn by this new energy. Why? The commander barked, visibly irritated. They are the problem. He waved his hand dismissively toward the crowd. No, sir, the younger officer insisted, his voice rising in pitch. They're not the problem. They're our community. We're supposed to protect them. If they're afraid, that's on us. His courage inspired a ripple of murmurs from the crowd, and Adrian felt a spark of hope flare within him. Please, Maria urged, stepping beside Adrian. We are not here to cause trouble. We only want you to understand what we are fighting for. Her voice was softer now, almost pleading, and it resonated with the humanity they all craved. The older officer stood frozen for a moment, processing the conflicting orders and emotions. He looked back at the riot officers, a silent discussion passing between them, and Adrian could see the struggle within him. The old man with the cane took a step forward, his frailty making him seem almost fragile against the gathering storm, yet his words pierced through like a beacon. I buried my son trying to keep my family safe, he declared, voice trembling yet fierce. I just want my grandson to know a world where he can play outside without fearing for his life. Silence wrapped around them all like a thick blanket, the weight of the moment laden with emotion. Adrian could feel the breath of the crowd, collectively holding onto that hope for change. Would they break through the wall of fear? But just as it seemed the tide was turning, a rustling behind the armored officers made Adrian's stomach drop. Out of the shadows emerged a small group of figures, cloaked and hooded, appearing almost like phantoms amidst the flashing lights. Their presence sent an icy shiver through the crowd, and Adrian instinctively took a step back. What is happening? He whispered, urgency tightening in his chest. The weight of their fragile progress felt suddenly precarious, like a delicate house of cards on the verge of collapse. The commander, eyes narrowing, whipped around to face the new arrivals. What is this? He demanded, his voice a harsh edge slicing through the confusion. Adrian exchanged a worried glance with Maria, who looked as if she were about to take a step forward. We can't lose this chance, he thought, adrenaline surging through him. Just then, one of the cloaked figures pulled down the hood, revealing a familiar face. It was someone Adrian had not expected to see, a former ally. Someone whose presence could change everything. Adrian, we need to talk, the figure said, urgency dripping from their words. Time is running out. And with those words, the foundation of hope they had built was suddenly cracked wide open, promising revelations that could either lift them or bury them further beneath the weight of chaos. Adrian's breath hitched as he recognized the figure standing before him. It was Ava, a journalist who had long since faded from the community's struggles, her face once filled with enthusiasm now overshadowed by desperation. "What do you mean? Time is running out," he asked, the gravity of her words gripping him tightly. Ava's gaze flickered to the commander, then back to Adrian, her voice low but urgent. "They're planning something big, Adrian. This isn't about just keeping order. It's about silencing dissent for good. You've got to get your people to safety." Adrian felt the pulse of the crowd, their fears simmering just beneath the surface. Maria clutched his arm, her eyes wide with alarm. "What do you know, Ava?" Ava took a deep breath, her voice steadying. "I've been digging into the local government's plans. There's talk of cracking down harder than before, detentions, sweeps, even worse. If they feel threatened, they'll take desperate measures." The commander shifted ominously at the mention of crackdowns, his expression darkening. For a moment, Adrian's heart sank. Could they really be facing another escalation? His mind whirled, processing the implications. This was bigger than just a protest or a confrontation. It was about survival. "We can't just leave," he insisted, glancing at the crowd filled with worried faces. "They deserve to be heard." "They'll hear you from jail cells," Ava replied, eyes blazing with urgency. "You have to find a way to disperse the group, bring them together, but apart. If you can get to the town hall, it might buy some time." Adrian looked to Maria, who was biting her lip, eyes shining with worry. "Is it worth it, Adrian?" she asked softly. "What if they hurt us? What if they hurt you?" Adrian could feel the strain in her voice, the weight of her fear resting on his shoulders. "It's worth it," he said firmly, "if it means we protect our families. And if I have to face them alone, I will." Just then, a loud shout broke through the tension, a voice rising above the crowd. "Look out!" Adrian's heart raced as he turned to see one of the riot officers shoving their way through, ready to confront the cloaked figures who had emerged. Adrian pressed closer to Ava, the realization of their pressed situation crystallizing in his thoughts. "Listen," he said swiftly, "we have to act now. We need to call everyone together, but we also need to control the narrative." Ava nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes. "If we can get them to trust us one more time," she urged. "But we have to make it quick." As they strategized in hushed tones, the crowd's tension began to bubble over once again. Faces turned from uncertainty to a mix of panic and determination, the humans behind the helmets now beginning to close in a visible iron wall of authority. "Together, everybody," Adrian called out, projecting a sense of unity. "We can stand as one." But before he could finish, another figure emerged from the shadows, this time advancing towards the commander. A heavy cloak draped over their shoulders, with something gleaming at their side, a weapon. The murmurs escalated, hearts racing, the air thick with fear. "Adrian, I can't." Maria's voice trembled as she reached for his hand. "Stay close," he yelled back, steeling himself. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with danger and the weight of decisions. What was to come could pivot them into safety or into darkness. As the figure stepped into the light, revealing their face, Adrian's anxiety morphed into something sharper, a knife's edge of trepidation. "Who asked that?" he whispered, dread pooling in his stomach. And at that moment, it felt as though everything would hinge on their next move. Would they find a way out, or would they have to face chaos head-on? Adrian squinted through the dim light, trying to discern the figure moving closer. The crowd quieted, a collective breath held in anticipation. The cloaked stranger, now fully illuminated, pulled back the fabric, revealing a familiar face. It was Daniel, their former neighbor, a figure once known for his community spirit, but who had drifted away into an opulent life, leaving behind the struggles of the people. "Daniel?" Adrian called, disbelief wrapping around his voice. A mix of emotions washed over him, relief mingled with anger. How could he show up now? "Adrian," Daniel replied, his voice thick with urgency. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I need to help you. They're gearing up to make their move. It's worse than you think." Adrian's heart was pounding. "And what makes you think we want your help now?" "You need to trust me," Daniel insisted, his eyes scanning the crowd, clearly aware of the brewing storm. "If we don't act fast, there won't be anyone left to trust." Maria's grip tightened on Adrian's arm as the officer's shielded forms loomed closer. The tension thickened, and Adrian felt the weight of the crowd pressing against him. He took a breath, trying to think clearly, but panic was tightening its grip around him. "What do you know?" Adrian asked, studying Daniel's face for honesty. "They're planning to make an example of you," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I have contacts inside the local offices. I can get you information, a way to get your people to safety." Adrian's incredulity was palpable. Could he trust someone who had turned his back on them? Yet deep down, Adrian knew he had no choice. If there was a path to save his people, he had to explore it, even with the risk of betrayal. "All right," he said, the words igniting a nervous energy within him. "But if you're lying, I'm not," Daniel interjected, frustration breaking through his calm demeanor. "I have resources. I'm not the same person I was before, Adrian." I couldn't stand by anymore. It was killing me. As the crowd began to murmur again, the tension at the edges of their gathering escalating with every passing second, Adrian turned back to Ava and Maria. They needed a plan, and they needed it now. "Listen up." Adrian raised his voice, cutting through the chaotic noise. "We need to establish a way for everyone to disperse without causing a panic. We can't allow anyone to be caught off guard." Ava nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We can use the alleyways behind the building. It's a narrow escape, but it might work. People can move quietly, one group at a time. I'll lead them." "Good," Adrian replied, his heart racing as he felt the palpable nervous energy in the air. "And we'll use the distraction you create to guide the rest towards Town Hall. It's safer there. Be careful," Maria said, her worry cutting through the urgency. "Don't let them get you." Adrian hesitated, facing her. He wanted to tell her it would be fine, that they'd all make it through this. But the truth hung heavy between them. He didn't know what awaited them, and every instinct screamed to keep Maria close despite the risk. With a final nod to her, Adrian turned his attention back to Daniel and Ava, who were already outlining a plan. Just then, the loud crack of a baton on a shield echoed through the air, and Adrian felt the simmering fear ignite into something more volatile. The officers were ready to make their move, no longer patient. "Now," he shouted, adrenaline thrusting him forward. The plan had to unfold quickly, each moment counting as the air thickened with dread as Adrian moved towards the gathered people, ready to implore them to follow his lead. Something strange caught his eyes, a flicker of movement in the crowd that sent chills racing down his spine. Someone else was watching, but he paused, heartbeat thunderous in his ears as his gaze searched for the source. What was about to happen? And just like that, Adrian realized the stakes were higher than he'd thought. He could sense the impending shift, a reckoning on the horizon, directing everything into chaos. Adrian's heart raced, the tension pressing against him like a vice. He had to act, had to turn the tide in this moment where everything hung in the balance. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, positioning himself between the crowd and the advancing officers, Maria's hand still intertwined with his. "We are not here to fight." Adrian's voice rang out, louder than the chaos raging around them. "We are here to find a solution. We're all human beings, the elderly, the children, the workers. We care for one another. We depend on each other. You can't take that away from us." The commander's gaze fixed on him, a mixture of surprise and irritation crossing his features. "Stand down," Adrian urged the crowd. He could feel their unease, a wave of worry that threatened to break. "Help me show them who we are." As if sensing the shift, the younger officer from before stepped forward, eyes glistening with determination. "Yes, right. They're people. Families. We can't just act without understanding what we're standing against," he said, voice trembling but steady. Adrian turned to the crowd, locking eyes with familiar faces. "We have each other. Let us show them we'll fight for our homes together." The crowd surged behind him, voices rising in unified support. Together, they chanted, the rhythm building, an echo of solidarity. The commander hesitated, his stance wavering. Adrian seized this moment, stepping even closer and lowering his voice. "Remember the reason we're here, not just for ourselves, but for every heart beating to build a home where they belong. We can talk. We need to talk." Amidst the fear, a flicker of understanding sparked between Adrian and the officers. The distance began to shrink, the shields slowly lowering, just as the walls separating them crumbled with compassion. "You all have families too," Adrian said, voice softening. "What would happen if the roles were reversed? If your homes were at stake?" Another round of silence filled the alley, now thick with raw emotion. Adrian noticed the officers glancing at one another, clearly battling the orders they were given against the evident humanity standing before them. Then, the cloaked figure, Daniel, stepped forward again with urgency. We can't let any more lives be lost to fear. We can choose compassion over violence. I'll back him. I'll help. You don't have to be our enemies. His words reverberated through the crowd, stirring hope like a blossoming flower breaking through concrete. A ripple of nods cascaded through the demonstrators, and with every ounce of human connection tangible, the tension in the air shifted toward possibility. Ava leaned in closer, her determination infectious. Listen, if we can reach town hall, we can make our plea known. We can let the council hear our stories. We need to leave now while we can. The younger officer interrupted, apprehension creeping into his voice. He looked back, feeling the weight of urgency. Otherwise, we'll be outnumbered soon. Then let us move, Adrian declared, gesturing toward the side alleys, where routes split like veins in a leaf. Stay calm and follow me. We'll make it through together. One by one, they began to disperse, the crowd moving as a singular unit, flowing away from the confrontation, adrenaline pushing them onward. As they crept into the shadows of the alley, Adrian took a moment to breathe deeply, scanning the faces around him. Despite the fear still palpable in their hearts, there was a flame ignited amongst them, a flames of unity and strength. They emerged like a phoenix from its ashes, against all odds. Maria caught his eye, tears of pride shimmering. You did it. You brought them together. Adrian felt a rush of warmth spreading through him. No, we did it, he corrected softly, squeezing her hand. All of us. Together. They reached a quieter part of the neighborhood that housed the town hall. The tension outside transformed into camaraderie. One by one, they shared their stories, their struggles, their aspirations. The rain pounded above them, but it felt like a cleansing dance in the midst of chaos. Today we stand for change. Adrian spoke to the gathering community, feeling the chorus of agreement ripple through them. This wasn't just about homes, it was about people, about futures entwined in solidarity. As the sun peeked shyly through the clouds, splashing golden hues into a gloomy sky, Adrian gazed out at the sea of acceptance and compassion. They were here to write the narrative of their lives. He felt hope surge through him, buoyed by the tenacity of their fight, and no matter what tomorrow brought, they had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. They stood together, a tapestry of shared humanity, woven through love and justice. And in that moment, Adrian realized the truth. Walls couldn't hold back the strength of a united heart. Then, with renewed determination, he knew this wasn't just a story of confrontation. It was a story of transformation, a journey towards something brighter. Now it was time to act. And with every reason to share that hope, Adrian turned to the camera, streaming their moment to the world. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories about communities standing up for what they believe in. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It's your support that truly matters. Comment your reactions and feelings about this journey of transformation, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see that together we can achieve the impossible.